Assalamu alaikum. Welcome in today's class. Today's lesson is the spread of civilization in East Asia. This is your textbook part 3, lesson number 6. And you can reach this lesson onto your student book page number 36 and 37. Let's move on to the lesson objective. It says that you must be able to know that how China expanded and grew richer under the powerful Tang dynasty and Song dynasty. Then you must be able to know that how Mongol expanded into China and some other parts of the world, and then how Chinese they restored their own control under the leadership of the Ming dynasty. Then you must be able to know the salient features of Korean and Japanese society, which we are going to discuss one by one. Our first slide is about the golden ages of China. You know that China has a wonderful history. They are one of the oldest nation. They are among the few early civilizations in the world that emerged from the river valleys. They had a glorious history. They had a rich culture. They had seen ups and downs throughout the history, the prosperity, the natural disasters, wars, conflict, but still, as a nation, they survived, and as a nation, they had maintained their identity. Um, you remember that in the second part of the book, we studied that how Chinese established different empires, they unified the country, they developed Confucius beliefs. Then during the Han Dynasty, they developed the Silk Road. Before the Han Dynasty, people in China believed that they were a middle kingdom. They were isolated for a long time, but then eventually they passed through Himalayas and they established their trade links with other nations. They built the Great Wall of China, which is one of the wonders in the world. So Chinese, they had a wonderful history of the past. When they entered during the ages of Tang Dynasty, they were going through at that time a period of decline. But eventually, Tang Dynasty actually, you can say, restored the power or unified the country. The disintegration period, or you can say the fragmentation period, was almost 400 years from 220 AD until you can say 600 AD. So this was a time of disintegration. Eventually, Tang Dynasty took over and they unified the country. They restored the earlier glory of the past. They expanded the Chinese territory into the Central Asia and surrounding areas. They established their tributary states. A tributary state is a kind of a state which acknowledges the power, or you can say supremacy, of the bigger emperor. Although they have their own ruler, they have their own rules and regulations, their own army, but for the sake of protection, they acknowledge the power of a bigger emperor, and in return they get protection. But for what? They pay regular tributes to that bigger emperor in form of, you can say, money or cash or whatever the procedure was implemented in those times. So China established tributary systems during the times of Tang Dynasty. Then Chinese not only established their supremacy in military warfare but also in economic and cultural aspects of the life. So they expanded Chinese influence beyond the territorial boundaries of China. Then during the times of Tang Dynasty, the agriculture improved, the system of canals was modernized, Chinese economy improved. They had a trade surplus with other nations. Trade surplus mean that what they sold to other nations was more than what they purchased from other nations, which means that they earned quite a lot as compared to what they consumed to purchase the products of other nations. So their trade with other nations was always in surplus. Then eventually Tang dynasty actually declined, and for some period there was again disintegration or fragmentation, but very shortly another dynasty took over the power. This time it was a Song dynasty. The period under the Song rule is also called as the golden age of Chinese history. During the times of the Song, farming improved, trade improved, Chinese culture and Chinese political and military influence, not the military but political and cultural influence increased. or you can say expanded beyond the boundaries of China, particularly in Southeast Asia. It was during the times of the Song dynasty that paper money was introduced. Trade remained in surplus, farming improved quite a lot, which resulted in a population boom. Cities actually expanded. Previously, the cities were the centers of the power, national power, but now the cities became the center of the trade and economic activity. Chinese population increased during these, you can say, golden ages of Song and Tang dynasties. The government and the society during the Tang and the Song dynasties, they were very well organized. They were centralized powers. There was bureaucracy that was involved in performing the day-to-day responsibilities of the government. So it was a highly organized society, but still the society was divided into social sections. Other than emperor, there were royal families at the elite level, at the top level, and below the aristocratic families, or you can say the royal families, there were the two main social classes, which was nobility, or you can say the gentry, and the peasantry. So gentry was actually a social class that was composed of landowners, nobles, merchants, wealthy class, wealthy people, and they were highly educated. These people, they were part of the government bureaucracy. They performed, they occupied many jobs at the higher level. So these people were highly influential in the Chinese society. But peasants, although they farmed, they were the lowest section of the society, but they were still able to move up into the social order. They could improve their social conditions by improving their economic position. So Chinese society actually encouraged every citizen to contribute or to move forward for achieving prosperity. During these two dynasties, Tang and Song, Chinese culture achieved miles and miles up in the hierarchy of improvement. Chinese culture flourished. All parts of all aspects of culture flourished, like poetry and works of art, like philosophy, religion, and history. Chinese works of art actually, you can see that they contributed in depicting a rich history of the past. They had their own, you can say, specific or distinctive features, which is different from the other nations around the world. So Chinese literature actually established its own, you can say, genuine acknowledgement, or you can say genuine aspect, which was different than the other nations. So during these two dynasties, China improved or emerged as a dominant nation with its own cultural, social, political aspects, and with its own economical, you can say, model that were implemented into the Chinese society. You can see that even today, the Chinese economical model are quite different from the rest of the world. They, wherever the Chinese go, they bring with them their own economic model, which are based in modern day China. So Chinese, from throughout the history, they have maintained a distinct economic model running in their country, which was different from the other countries around the world. After the Tang and Song dynasties, there was a period of decline. During this declining period, actually, another rival nation emerged, which was known as Mongols. You have already studied about the Mongols, that they belong to modern day Mongolia. But once they emerged as a dominant nation, they started to expand very quickly. And within a short period, they were ruling from Korea and China in the east to parts of Europe in the west, parts of Islamic State in the southwest, parts of Russia in the north. So within a short period, Mongols expanded very quickly. But during this expansion of the Mongols, they brought peace and prosperity and political stability in the regions they controlled, uh, particularly in China. They removed the Song dynasty around 1280. So it was a time period when Mongols started to consolidate their position. But then around 50 to 60 years, somewhere in 1316 onward, Chinese started to you can say resist the Mongol control in their areas. Ultimately, Chinese army under the new dynasty emerged, which was known as the Ming Dynasty. They restored the full political and military control over their own areas, and they repelled or they kicked the Mongols out of their regions. They built the Great Wall of China to defend themselves from the north against the Mongol invasions in the future. So during the Ming Dynasty, actually, they restored the bureaucracy, they restored the civil services exams, they restored the Confucius beliefs that were established during the times of Han Dynasty. So during the times of Ming Dynasty, also the Chinese once again they re-emerged as a dominant nation on the surface of the world. During the times of the Ming Dynasty, China started to expand upwards beyond their territorial areas. For the sake of extending their political and military influence, Chinese they built big ships and they traveled in the oceans for the sake of extending their military influence and to collect the tribute. Not only in the Pacific, but also they entered into Indian Ocean, and as far as the East African regions, they tried to exert their military power. About the Korea, Korea is actually just connected to China, mainland China. It is in the northeast of the country, and it has been under the Chinese influence since the times of the Han Dynasty. So, although it absorbed many of the Chinese cultural and political aspects and traditions and cultures, but still Korea maintain its identity, it's maintain in its individuality, it remain a kind of isolated country, although it had trade relationship with China only, but it tried to remain exertive on its individual identity. The inventions that they took from China, they improved them. For example, printing of the wood blocks. This was a technique that was introduced by Chinese and further improved by the Koreans. Similarly, the language alphabets were improved by the Koreans, and they started to, you can say, improve their own separate language, which was different from the Chinese. So Korea, just a small nation, just in the vicinity of China, emerged, you can say, while you can say following the policy of isolationism, but although they remained isolated, but still they were under the influence of Chinese culture and Chinese political and economic expansion into the region, and they adopted from them and they implemented everything from China in their own society. This is the end of today's lesson. Inshallah, about Japan, we will discuss the remaining portion in the next week. Until then, if you have any question about this topic, you can put your questions in the Schoology. Till that time, see you again. Thank you very much.